You're standing in a grocery store aisle, halfway between eggs and orange juice, when a uniformed cop suddenly steps toward you, eyes narrowed, tone sharp. No crime's been committed. No alarm's been raised. Just you standing still, and him assuming the worst. But what he doesn't know is that you're not just another shopper, you're an undercover FBI agent moments away from closing a 6-month federal case. And with one wrong word, one ego-driven move, he's about to blow it all wide open. This isn't a what if, it happened. And the fallout wasn't just operational, it was cultural, institutional, human. Because what played out in that aisle became a mirror for how power, perception, and professionalism collide in real time. And in that moment, only one person remembered how to stand still and hold their ground without raising their voice. It always starts with something small. A look, a suspicion, a routine that spirals into a reckoning. This story doesn't begin with flashing lights or sirens, but in the chilled air of a suburban grocery store. A place where ordinary intersects with extraordinary. Where a man in uniform made a decision that would ripple far beyond his badge. We live in an age where perception often overshadows truth, where assumptions are treated like evidence, and silence is either read as guilt or power. But what happens when a misplaced suspicion doesn't just embarrass someone, it burns down months of undercover work, exposing systemic cracks too deep to ignore? This isn't just about a mistaken identity. It's about ego, authority, and how one man's hunch nearly sank a federal investigation. Let me introduce you to the players in this unraveling drama. Officer Cole Maddox, a 7-year veteran of the local force, proud, sharp-eyed, and always walking the line between vigilance and overreach. Agent Elijah Grant, undercover FBI operative with a calm presence and sharper instincts. And Agent Noel Sayers, Grant's seasoned partner who's as precise as a scalpel when things start to bleed. They didn't know each other, at least. Not before the dairy aisle showdown that would pit jurisdiction against judgment. This isn't a story of heroes and villains. It's a story of how assumptions can detonate careful strategy and how dignity can still stand tall in the middle of chaos. And it begins with a casual patrol turned cautionary tale. Officer Cole Maddox wasn't on duty. Not really. He was in uniform, sure, but that afternoon he was running a quick errand at Finley's Market, a 6-pack, a protein bar, something to chew on before heading home. He had no radio call, no formal complaint, just a gut feeling that pricked him as he passed the bakery. That feeling had a source, a man early 40s, tall, fit, standing near the yogurt display with his phone out and nothing in his hands. Didn't have a cart, didn't look like he was shopping, just watching, quietly, like he had no reason to be there. But for Maddox, quiet wasn't neutral, it was suspicious. And that was all the invitation he needed. Now, here's where things pivot. Where some officers might take a moment, watch from a distance, maybe ask a polite question. Maddox charged in like a hammer looking for a nail. Chest puffed, boots clapping against tile. He approached the man with a stare meant to intimidate. "You with store security?" Maddox asked sharply. The man Elijah Grant looked up with a steady calm. No irritation, no alarm. Just presence. No, he answered simply. That answer didn't sit right with Maddox. Too short, too confident, too unfazed. You've been watching people a little too long to just be here shopping, Maddox pushed. You planning to pay for anything? Grant pocketed his phone and replied in a quiet tone. Sir, I'm in the middle of something. You're interfering. Those two words, you're interfering, they landed like a slap. To a cop like Maddox, being told to stand down felt like disrespect, not protocol. He scanned Grant's hands, his posture, looking for something, anything to justify pushing further. And when Grant calmly said, Special Agent, FBI, badges in my back pocket, Maddox's first instinct wasn't compliance. It was suspicion. And let's pause here because this is where commentary matters. The fact that a federal badge didn't immediately de-escalate the situation says something profound. Not about law enforcement broadly, but about certain individuals who mistake command for correctness. About a culture where the authority to question becomes an addiction to control. Back in the store, Maddox demanded to see the badge. Grant complied slowly, deliberately, hands always visible. He opened the badge wallet. Maddox glanced and dismissed it. Fake, he grunted. You think you're the first guy who's tried that? The tension thickened like fog. Other shoppers started to notice. Phones tilted. Eyes watched. And just when things threatened to erupt, another presence stepped into the aisle. Noelle Sayers. Dressed in plain clothes, but with the energy of someone used to taking command. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flash her badge with flair. She stepped between Maddox and Grant with surgical precision and said, Officer, you're interfering with a federal operation. That line froze the air. But Maddox didn't. Back down. And you are, he shot back. Sayers opened her badge folder at chest level. Special Agent Sayers, we're conducting live surveillance. And you've compromised it, Maddox scoffed. 2 agents. No coordination, no suspect, no heads up to local PD. You really expect me to believe this is legit? But Sayers didn't flinch. We expect you to exercise basic professionalism, she said. Eyes like steel. And that was the first time Maddox blinked. Because the room wasn't on his side anymore. The shoppers weren't clapping or yelling. They were recording. Silent judgment. Collective witness. And somewhere in that silence, the target of this 6-month sting, Trina T.D. Halston, slipped out the front door. The moment the sliding doors closed behind Trina Halston, the case cracked. And yet, inside the store, the showdown continued. Officer Cole Maddox wasn't done because he couldn't admit he was wrong. His pride had been bruised, not by volume or confrontation, but by composure. Elijah Grant hadn't yelled. Noelle Sayers hadn't escalated. They'd done what professionals are trained to do, hold the line even while someone else crossed it. Maddox, on the other hand, was still trying to assert dominance. You're both just grocery shopping for justice now, he mocked. It was sarcasm born of embarrassment. He didn't realize yet that he had become the story, not the suspect. Grant remained silent. Sayers answered instead. We were tracking someone who's been laundering EBT benefits across state lines. She was supposed to meet a contact here. Now she's gone. Thanks to you. The sting in her voice wasn't anger, it was precision. Maddox tried to recover ground. You didn't notify local law enforcement. That's on you. No. Sayers replied. That's containment. You don't telegraph live surveillance. We keep it tight so people don't spook. It was textbook, but Maddox didn't hear it that way. All he heard was someone telling him he wasn't needed. He felt the room closing in, phones still raised, glances still darting. The energy wasn't chaos. It was humiliation, and here's where the commentary deepens. What we see in this moment isn't just a misstep, it's a mirror. Maddox didn't blow the operation because he was evil. He blew it because he needed to be right. Because in a world that drills officer safety and command presence into young patrolmen, the idea that someone might outrank you and do it calmly is a threat to identity. This wasn't about crime anymore. It was about ego. And that ego had cost the Bureau 6 months of undercover groundwork. As Sayers explained what Trina had done creating fake farm supplier fronts to convert fraudulent EBT funds into clean cash, you could see Maddox starting to piece it together. She's been fronting fake produce vendors, he asked. Hundreds of thousands, Sayers confirmed. She was slippery. Today we had her. You walked in and burned it. Still, Maddox pushed back. I was doing my job. No, Grant finally said. You were acting on a hunch. Not a call, not a tip, just a look. Maddox clenched his jaw. I had a right to ask questions. Sure, Sayers said. But it's how you did it. You didn't ask. You accused. You went in ready to detain. A shopper across the store whispered to her partner. Another stepped behind a pillar. The tension hadn't gone away. It had just transformed from threat to shame. Maddox demanded names. Grant gave his full title. Special Agent Elijah Grant, Charlotte Field Office. Sayers did the same. Maddox wrote them down, muttering as he did. His stance hadn't softened. If anything, it looked more defensive now. You gonna run to the Bureau, he sneered. Grant didn't blink. What happens next depends on your department. Your record. But it's not going away. Sayers added, you made choices, on camera, in public. Phones don't lie. That line stung, because Maddox knew it was true. The videos weren't screaming viral yet, but they would be. And even if no one uploaded them, someone would save them. Evidence. The public kind. Maddox took a half step back. Still hovering, still clinging to control. Let's be real, he said. You two show up in plain clothes, don't notify local PD, and I'm the problem? You made yourself the problem, Grant answered. You didn't approach with curiosity. You approached with control. Maddox rolled his eyes. So now it's personal? No, Grant said. It's operational. You saw a man standing still, and you built a crime around him. Sayers folded her arms. That's not policing. That's profiling. And there it was, the word no one wanted to say first. Profiling, let's sit with that. Because the story doesn't work without it. This isn't just about a white officer confronting a black man. It's about how roles, perceptions, and authority are shaped by cultural conditioning. Maddox didn't think he was being biased. But that's the trick. With bias, it doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It rationalizes. It dresses itself in uniforms and procedure. And it convinces good people they're just being careful when really they're being careless. Back in the store, a manager in a red polo approached cautiously. "Everything all right here?" he asked, eyes darting between badges and uniforms. "We're good," Grant said, without turning. The manager nodded. He gestured toward Sayers, was in here earlier. Didn't cause trouble. He was quiet, too, just looking around. Nothing wrong. It wasn't a vote of confidence, but it wasn't a complaint either. Just facts. Maddox shifted his stance again. "So where's this suspect now?" Sayers scanned. "The front. Gone. Thanks to you." Maddox wanted to argue. He opened his mouth, closed it. Someone behind the fruit display muttered, "He just couldn't stand a confident brother standing still." Maddox spun. No one took credit. The phones weren't pointed anymore, but that wasn't relief. That was resignation. The moment had already been captured. Judgment had already been passed. Maddox took out his notepad. "I'll file a report," he said. "Names, timeline, my part in it. You planning to leave anything out?" Sayers asked. "No, I'll tell it straight. I messed up." It was the first thing he said that didn't sound like deflection. Grant studied him. "You know what bothered me the most?" Maddox shook his head. "You never asked why I was there. You just moved in. You assumed." That landed. Not like a slap, like a mirror. Maddox nodded slowly. "I've got work to do with myself." Sayers looked at him levelly. "You've got a badge. What you do with it after this, that's what matters." Maddox took one last look. "Thanks for not escalating. You didn't have to, but you did." Grant said quietly, "You didn't deserve it, but we gave it anyway." Maddox didn't reply. This time he just laughed. No swagger. No scan for cameras. Just walked out of the store. Like the air had changed. Some consequences don't explode, they echo. The operation was over. The target was gone. But for agents Elijah Grant and Noel Sayers, what lingered wasn't just frustration. It was grief. Professional grief. The kind that doesn't scream or break down, but sits in the chest like a weight. Because they hadn't just lost a suspect. They'd lost trust in the system, in interagency cooperation, in the idea that silence could still be safe. Minutes after Officer Maddox walked out of Findley's Market, Sayers tapped her earpiece. Her voice was low, controlled, almost clinical. "Control, this is Delta 6. Surveillance compromised." Suspect exited through north entrance 10 minutes ago. Visual lost at parking lot. The confirmation came through. The window had closed. Grant didn't move. He stood there, eyes locked on the yogurt display, the exact spot where things had gone sideways. It wasn't about milk or dairy. It was about seconds. About how close they were, and how fast it all slipped. She knew, he finally muttered. She saw him enter, saw the uniform. Knew it wasn't aimed at her, but bolted anyway. Sayers. Nodded. She's smart and trained. She reacted the second our cover cracked. Now let's analyze this deeper. Trina Halston wasn't just a petty thief or low-level grifter. She was a strategist. Someone who moved between identities, across jurisdictions, using the very chaos of fragmented law enforcement as camouflage. She didn't run when spotted. She vanished before you even looked. That's how she'd moved over $400,000 in fake EBT transactions under a false produce supply chain. And now, thanks to one premature confrontation, she was loose again, back in the store, while tension deflated like a balloon with a slow leak. A woman approached, early 30s, badge on her lanyard, hesitant steps. "Agents?" she asked. Sayers turned. "Yes, I'm Dana, assistant security lead. I've been watching the footage. Your suspect, she paid cash at register 9, left with a green bag. She ducked when the officer came into frame. Her hand shook slightly as she handed over a USB drive. Sayers took it, nodded. "Thank you. That helps. We'll follow up through our office." Dana nodded and stepped back, relieved. As she disappeared into the back office, Grant whispered, "She paid attention. That already puts her above Maddox." Sayers smirked barely, then fell silent again. Outside, the air had cooled. Grant stood by the SUV, arms crossed, the tension in his shoulders unshakable. "I was watching the register line the whole time," he said. "She wasn't twitchy. She wasn't clocking me. Not until he walked in like he owned the place." Sayers adjusted her mic, her voice softer. "You didn't lose it. You didn't escalate." "I wanted to," Grant admitted. "But you didn't," she replied. And that, truly, was the difference. In a world where restraint is often undervalued, Grant had modeled it. And yet, it wasn't enough to save the op. It just saved the room from boiling over. The truth here is uncomfortable, because it forces us to confront how fragile coordination really is. One jurisdiction, one officer, one ego. That's all it took to fracture 6 months of surveillance, case building, paperwork, field coordination across 3 cities. Grant turned toward the parking lot. "She was right there," he said. Sayers didn't respond, because nothing she could say would undo it. Then, a ping. His phone buzzed with a new alert. Trina's burner phone had just reconnected. It was now tracking 90 miles east, heading not south, but in the opposite direction. That single moment reset the day. "Truck stop off 74, Grant said. Sayers was already pulling up GPS. Could be her, could be her buyer, could be bait. We don't sit on it, Grant said. And just like that, the operation rebooted. Let's sit with the emotional depth of this shift. Because behind the urgency is exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep cures, but the kind that wears on your faith. Grant didn't want revenge. He wanted restoration. He wanted the balance of law to work as designed, quiet, diligent, coordinated. And yet, once again, that hope had been derailed not by a criminal, but by someone on the same team. They climbed into the SUV. No radio chatter. No bravado. Just silent recalibration. It wasn't about anger. It was about clarity. About making sure the next mistake didn't come from their side. Sayers began prepping their surveillance gear. Pen camera, external mic, backup, IDs, burner, tablets. Grant drove with focus, no lights, no sirens, just purpose. This time, he said, we move quiet. Sayers nodded. Because loud already cost us once today. They drove in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't ask to be broken. Not yet. Every mile they covered toward that truck stop felt like a recovery run, pacing not just to catch a suspect, but to reclaim something that had been stripped from them hours earlier. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a test of professional resilience, a checkpoint on the road between doing everything right and having it fall apart anyway. As Agent Elijah Grant drove, Agent Noel Sayers monitored. The signal. Trina Halston's burner had pinged again, this time from a small truck stop diner off Highway 74, 22 minutes out. She's moving, Sayers said, almost to herself. Either she's leading us or she's trying to shed us. Grant didn't answer right away. His jaw flexed, eyes locked on the road. If she's leaving breadcrumbs, we follow. But we don't bite. Now, let's add some insight. These are the moments the public never sees, the ones without chase scenes or confrontations. Just two federal agents, sleep-deprived, bruised by bureaucracy and bias, chasing digital footprints. What separates them from their mistakes isn't training. It's how they manage those silences. How they drive forward anyway. At the truck stop, they didn't park up front. They pulled around to the far side, near a vending machine bay half hidden from view. The scent of diesel and fryer grease hung thick in the humid dusk. One man smoked near the loading dock, but paid them no attention. That was good. They didn't want to be seen, not yet. Inside, the diner lights buzzed overhead. Yellow tile, vinyl booths. A flickering open sign that looked older than most cars in the lot. Sayers entered first. Grant followed, hanging back just enough to let her take the temperature of the room. The diner wasn't full. A few drivers nursing coffee. One woman on a laptop. Nobody who fit Trina's profile. Then buzz. Grant's phone again. Same burner. Different location. She's not here, he said. She pinged again. 5 miles east. A motel. Sayers raised a brow. She's testing us. Moving just fast enough to see if we're following. Grant nodded. And if we blink, she disappears again. Now this strategy is crucial to understand. Trina wasn't a sprinter. She was a tactician. She never burned rubber. She vanished in plain sight, paying in cash, carrying reusable bags from other stores, wearing nondescript clothes, no flash, no panic, just exits. That's why she was so hard to catch. She didn't act guilty. She acted practiced. They headed back to the SUV. "Do we move in hard?" Sayers asked. "Quiet," Grant said. We lost her once today because someone else went loud." It wasn't just procedural anymore. It was personal. They pulled up satellite overlays for the East Crest Motel, a low, rectangular building off Route 217. One flickering sign. A lot with 2 sedans, 1 pickup, and a curtainless office window. Sayers checked the front desk. The clerk barely looked up from his screen. "Need a room?" he mumbled. "No," she replied, flashing her badge. "We need the guest log." "Room 3. Who checked in?" The guy blinked. "Ah, Tracy Binham. Paid cash. Hour ago." "Description?" "Didn't see her." "Some guy checked in. Said it was for his girl." "Cameras?" "Not working," he muttered. They stepped back into the lot. The door to room 3 was closed, curtains drawn, no movement. "Could be her," Grant whispered, "or bait." Sayers didn't move. "If it's her, she already clocked us. Let's not knock." They backed off, circled wide, returned to the SUV. It was the hardest part of the job waiting. You've got all the tools, all the suspicion, and still you need probable cause. Still you need visual confirmation. That's law enforcement done right. It's also why people like Trina stay one step ahead. They ran plate checks. 1 sedan. Bounced back as a recent temp registration from Alabama. No listed owner. "She's here," Grant said. "But she's not alone. And if she's moving this fast, this isn't just about EBT fraud anymore. That's the real-world context. Worth explaining. Criminal operations like this don't exist in isolation. Trina wasn't just forging food assistance, it was part of a larger network. A fake supply chain meant to wash money, obscure it, then funnel it into usable forms. She exploited vulnerability, the very programs meant to help the underserved. And now, just like before, she was slipping through because of distraction. And division. In the SUV, Grant uploaded the grocery store footage to the Bureau's internal database. Not to get revenge on Officer Maddox, but to document failure. Not personal failure, system failure. Because what had happened wasn't unique. In Montgomery, 2 years ago, they'd lost an entire crew when a local officer jumped the perimeter on a labor site sting. That memory still stung, and it felt like déjà vu. "You know what scares me," Grant said, staring out at room 3. "She doesn't just react, she adapts. She builds her exits around us." Sayers nodded. She knew Maddox wasn't there for her, but she still saw danger. And moved. "Which means," Grant said quietly, She's watching how law enforcement behaves in real time and using it as part of her strategy. That's the most chilling part. Trina Halston didn't need violence. She didn't need weapons. She just needed to understand how law enforcement responds when it escalates, when it hesitates, when it falls apart. And then she moves accordingly. They agreed to wait 30 minutes. No movement from room 3. Then they'd log it and escalate. But they didn't feel defeated. They felt cornered, but still sharp. And they weren't going to make the same mistake twice. 30 minutes passed. No movement. No flickering curtain. No silhouette. Room 3 remained quiet, stubbornly so. Agents Elijah Grant and Noel Sayers watched from the SUV, eyes alternating between the door and the flickering motel sign that was missing the T, reading simply Mo_L. The place felt like a metaphor barely holding together and easy to miss something if you weren't looking closely. Grant tapped a quick log into the agency's field app. No visual confirmation, possible false lead. Then he stared at the motel like he could will it to give up its secrets. And in a way, he almost could. Because as they waited, something shifted not in the room, but in the air around them. The comm had a crack in it, and that crack widened when Officer Cole Maddox reappeared. He wasn't in his cruiser, wasn't stomping in with that same heavy walk from the grocery store. He came on foot from the side of the building, hands at his sides, steps slower than before. Grant spotted him first, but didn't move. Sayers saw him and ended her phone call with the Charleston office mid-sentence. "He's back," she said. Maddox approached like someone trying to walk against a current he couldn't see. His eyes weren't scanning, they were searching. For words, for grace, for something to stand on. "Look," he said, stopping a few feet away, "I'm not here to argue." "Then don't," Sayers replied, arms crossed. Grant's posture remained neutral, unreadable. Maddox shifted his weight. "I didn't know. I didn't mean to interfere." "You didn't ask," Grant said calmly. "You assumed." That word again, assumed. It hung in the air like smoke. And here's a moment worth breaking down. Because what followed wasn't a confrontation. It was a conversation. And in today's world, that's more powerful than it sounds. Maddox opened up, not out of pity, but out of realization. "I've been on the force 7 years," he said. "I've seen things that didn't look right at first, but turned out to be. I was trying to do the right thing." "And how many of those things looked like him?" Sayers asked, gesturing to Grant. Maddox didn't answer. He didn't need to. The flinch said it all. "You saw a man standing still," Grant said, "not causing trouble, not breaking a law. And your first move was to confront him." "It didn't feel right," Maddox replied, almost to himself. "Him just watching people." "I was working. So was I," Grant said. "Watching is part of my job." "You didn't look like law enforcement," Maddox muttered. "That's the point," Sayers cut in. "We're undercover. We're not supposed to look like cops. Let's pause here and draw out the deeper meaning. This moment, Maddox admitting his mistake, Sayers and Grant not gloating but holding him accountable. It's what progress looks like in its rawest form, not performative apologies or viral gotchas. Just quiet accountability between professionals. It's rare. And it matters. I didn't think, Maddox continued. I reacted. And that reaction, Grant said, cost us a suspect we've been tracking for 6 months. She launders stolen benefits from people who actually need them. Families. Kids. She walks while others starve. And she walked because you couldn't stop yourself from trying to be the hero. Maddox looked down. You think I was trying to be a hero? No, Grant said quietly. I think you were trying to feel like one. That one hit deep. Maddox's eyes flicked away. Chest rising and falling, slower now. More deliberate. You didn't know, Sayers said. But the difference is you weren't open to knowing. That's the part you've got to own. Maddox nodded. You're right. He let the silence stretch, then said, My supervisor called. Wants a full written account. I'll include everything. Full names, timeline, my part in it too. Sayers raised an eyebrow. You planning to leave anything out? No. Maddox said, I'll tell it straight. I messed up. Grant studied him, then asked, You know what really got me? You never asked why I was there. You just asked what I was doing and who I was. You jumped to what I looked like. I wasn't a man in your eyes. I was a threat. Maddox didn't argue. He nodded, slowly. You're right, he said again. I've got work to do with myself. And it's here the lesson starts to crystallize. Because change doesn't come with training slides or hashtags. It comes in these moments when someone realizes they've been part of the problem and chooses to be part of the solution instead. Sayers looked him dead in the eye. You've got a badge. What you do with it after today, that's what matters more than what happened inside that store. I hear that, Maddox said. Then he turned to leave. But before he walked off completely, he added, For what it's worth, thanks for not escalating, either of you. You kept it level. I didn't deserve that. No, Grant said, but we gave it anyway. As Maddox walked away, not scanning for witnesses this time, not concerned with optics, just walking Grant's phone. Buzzed again. Trina's burner had pinged. Again. This time not far from where they sat. Still moving. Still watching. Still just one step ahead. The night wasn't over. Not yet. Not by a long shot. Trina Halston had pinged again 22 minutes east, a truck stop diner barely lit on the satellite map. Agents Elijah Grant and Noel Sayers didn't speak as the SUV pulled back onto the road. No need to. Their roles were second nature now. Grant drove, slow and legal, no sirens, no headlights flaring beyond necessity. Sayers geared up. Field mic, collar cam, backup IDs, burner phone switched to airplane mode. They were running light. No backup, no warrant. Just intuition and urgency. Now here's something to sit with. Exhaustion in federal fieldwork isn't just physical, it's philosophical. You do everything right. You move quiet. You blend. You gather evidence with surgical patience. And then someone with a badge and a blind spot barrels in and crushes the hours, the months, the delicate setup like it's disposable. What Grant and Sayers were chasing now wasn't just a fugitive, it was recovery. Recovery of purpose, of faith in their method. And maybe, if they were lucky, of justice to Dodd. They reached the truck stop just after 9:40 p.m. It was quiet but not deserted. A few semis parked along the back, windows dark. A soft hum of vending machines and a flickering neon hot food inside sign barely held the entrance together. They parked 2 rows from the diner. No lights, no idle engine. Grant pulled his hat low. Sayers adjusted her mic. We check. No contact. No arrest. Visual confirm only, she said. Then we escalate. Grant nodded once. No surprises. Inside, the diner smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. A few tired customers, hunched over booths, eyes on phones or nothing at all. Sayers scanned. No Trina. No matching profiles. Then Grant's phone buzzed again. She's moved. 5 miles east. A small motel. Sayers leaned in. She's teasing us. Or flushing us, Grant said, trying to see how many tails she's got, dropping signals to spot movement. And we took the bait, Sayers muttered. But they didn't stop. Because that's the thing about good agents. You never let frustration interfere with the mission. You follow the trail, even when it's a decoy. Especially then, the Eastview Motel wasn't much different than the last one. Long building. 5 rooms, cracked pavement, 1 street lamp flickering. They parked discreetly and did a slow drive-by. 1 sedan out front with temp tags from Alabama. A match. Again, they circled and parked near a boarded-up vending shelter, the kind of cover nobody questions. That's her car, Grant said, but no visual confirmation on her. We give it 30 minutes, Sayers said. Then we call it upstairs. Let them put eyes on her. And so they waited, and while they waited, they talked, but not about tactics. Not about Trina, about the world that made her invisible. You remember Montgomery? Grant asked. 2 years ago. Job site sting. Sayers nodded. Uniform. Jumped the fence before the takedown. Lost the whole crew. They scattered before we could ID half of them. It feels like that again, Grant said. We do everything right. We plan every step. And one guy walks in off-book and knocks it all over. Because they're not trained to move quiet, Sayers said. They're trained to command presence, to be loud, to be seen. And Trina, Grant added, built her whole operation on predicting that. He stared across the lot at room 3. Still dark, still quiet. She doesn't just run. She reacts. She reads us in real time, adjusts, evolves. That insight is what sets her apart. Trina Halston doesn't make the classic criminal mistake of assuming law enforcement is dumb or slow. She understands that the system isn't one machine, it's a dozen mismatched gears grinding against each other. She knows how to exploit the gaps. Where federal agents wait for warrants, she moves. Where local patrols assume guilt by posture, she blends. She doesn't fear chaos. She builds her strategy around it. From the SUV, Sayers ran another plate scan. Tag came back unlisted. Temp issued 2 weeks ago. No ownership registration logged. She's here, Grant said, but she's not alone in this. And if she's moving this fast between signals, Sayers replied, this isn't just a scam, it's a pipeline. They weren't chasing a con artist anymore. They were chasing a system. One that washed government assistance into usable money. One that used false vendors, fake addresses, burner accounts. And worst of all, one that targeted programs designed to feed the vulnerable, families, seniors, single moms. Trina didn't just defraud the government. She siphoned help away from people who needed it most. Another ping came through. Her burner lit up again, closer this time. Room 3's coordinates. She's watching, Grant said. She knows we're here. We don't move on it, Sayers said. Not without eyes. Not without backup. She's baiting us, Grant replied. She's testing if we'll break protocol, if we'll blow the case ourselves. This is the psychological warfare most people never see in law enforcement. It's not guns drawn. It's a battle of patience, of control, of not blinking when the other side is hoping you will. And as they waited, a hard truth sat between them. Trina was winning, because all she needed was for one more uniformed Maddox to walk through the motel door and declare, "This doesn't look right, but not tonight." Grant and Sayers weren't going in loud. They'd learned that lesson. They were ready to let the case breathe, even if it meant letting her go again. Because the difference between justice and damage is often found in restraint. By morning, a different kind of fallout had begun. Not in courtrooms, not in surveillance vans, but online, where a 28-second video clip began quietly making the rounds. It wasn't flashy. No car chase, no gun drawn. Just 2 men standing in a grocery store aisle near the butter one in uniform, one in plain clothes, and a confrontation that simmered without ever boiling over. Officer Cole Maddox and Special Agent Elijah Grant, frozen in mid-dispute, their voices calm but laced with tension. In the background, yogurt, apples, and the invisible weight of bias. The caption beneath the video read, "This man taught a cop more with silence than some folks do with a badge." By noon, it had over 60,000 views. By dinner, it had been reposted by 3 local news outlets. By nightfall, the department couldn't ignore it. Let's break this down. Not the video itself, but what it represented. It wasn't just another viral cop caught overstepping moment. It was something rarer. A confrontation that didn't end in shouting, didn't collapse into rage, but still exposed everything wrong with a culture that confuses suspicion for intuition. Elijah Grant didn't flinch. Didn't escalate, he held. And in doing so, he exposed more about the system than 100 angry think pieces ever could. Across the city, Captain Terence Ruhlman Maddox's direct supervisor sat in his office, watching the clip on loop. He'd already read Maddox's incident report, already reviewed internal logs, but watching the footage was different. It didn't need music, didn't need editing, it just was. And that was the problem. The truth was already out. Not because someone shouted it, but because someone had recorded it. A rupture, not an explosion. Ruhlman picked up the phone. "Called Internal Affairs. We need to open a file," he said. Now, Maddox wouldn't be fired. Not yet. But the wheels of accountability had begun turning. Meanwhile, back at the FBI field office, Grant sat at his desk with a half-empty cup of coffee and his screen still open to the last known ping from Trina Halston's burner. He hadn't spoken much since the motel stackout. He'd been quiet in a different way, less tired, more wary. There's a kind of mental fatigue that creeps in when the job starts to feel like a treadmill. You run fast, you sweat, you ache, but the view never changes. That's what it felt like now. Agent Noel Sayers stepped into the office, setting a flash drive on his desk. "Local news picked it up," she said. "You're a meme now." Grant didn't smile. "Wish it hadn't happened at all." "We did our jobs," Sayers replied. "Quiet, legal, measured. We didn't push. We didn't escalate." People saw that. Grant nodded, still lost the target. "We'll get her," and they would. But what stuck wasn't just the lost lead. It was the emotional gravity of why they'd lost it. That afternoon, Trina's burner pinged again. Florence, South Carolina. The signal was strong, unmasked, deliberate. Local agents picked it up. A sting was rebuilt slowly, quietly. Grant and Sayers weren't on that takedown. But their fingerprints were all over it. The surveillance footage Dana from the grocery store had saved, the license plate logs, the store aisle tension that forced everything to be documented. And when Trina was finally arrested, she had 4 fake IDs, 3 burner phones, and a laptop full of fraudulent vendor forms. The operation had laundered over $400,000 through manipulated EBT transactions and fake farm suppliers. It was professional. It was layered. And now, finally, it was dismantled. Grant didn't say anything when he read the arrest report. He just closed the tab. Justice served quietly doesn't need applause. It just needs to work. And what of Maddox? He completed his mandatory de-escalation training. He was reassigned to desk duty temporary with review pending. No badge strip, no suspension, just reflection. A long conversation with the department psychologist. 3 months of coursework. Nobody called it justice. But it was a start. And maybe that's enough for now. Here's the broader truth. The clip will fade. They all do. Another incident will take its place. Another headline. Another confrontation. But something shifted, not in the comments, not in the likes, but in the aisles. Where people now stop and look. Where silence doesn't just feel awkward, it feels intentional. where calm voices cut through weighty assumptions like light through smoke. And in the end, this story wasn't about Trina's escape or Maddox's overreach. It wasn't about a single mistake or even a single arrest. It was about a moment, a pause in the middle of a grocery store. A pause where judgment collided with professionalism and lost. A pause that reminded us, restraint is power. Not the power that flashes, the power that holds. The kind that doesn't announce itself but leaves a mark. Because sooner or later, every one of us walks through a mirror, and what we do when we see our reflection. Well, that's the real story. Weeks passed. Headlines shifted. The clip lost its viral velocity, buried under the avalanche of newer outrages, newer scandals, newer moments. But something lingered. Not online in the real world, in grocery store aisles, in patrol briefings, in the tone an officer used when approaching someone who didn't quite fit, in the silence before the assumption. And for Special Agent Elijah Grant, that was enough to keep showing up. Because his job wasn't about being seen. It was about what happened when he wasn't. Across from him in the field office, Agent Noel Sayers reviewed a fresh file. Another suspect. Another operation. Different city. Same shadows. The thing about justice work is that it doesn't stop when the target is caught. It resets. A new burner phone. A new fraud front. A new face watching from the yogurt aisle. You think Maddox changes after all this? Grant asked, not looking up from his screen. Sayers was quiet for a moment. I don't know, she said finally. But I think he saw himself clearly for once. That's more than most people ever get. Let's talk about that. The real lesson isn't in the confrontation, it's in the reflection. Everyone wants to believe they're the good guy, that their instincts are pure, that their badge is shield enough from bias. But sometimes growth starts when you realize your instincts are flawed. When you stop seeing your authority as the final word and start treating it like a responsibility. Maddox didn't change the world, but he stepped into accountability. And that's a better start than most. The bigger message, though, lives with Grant and Sayers, agents who did everything right, who de-escalated, who communicated, who protected a case even after it collapsed, who didn't scream for recognition but walked back into the field the next day anyway. There's a weight to professionalism, especially when it's quiet, especially when it's unrewarded, but they carried it anyway. Not because it made them heroes, but because it made them whole. And then there's Trina Halston. No longer a mystery, no longer a whisper in a database. When she was finally arrested in Florence, South Carolina, she didn't run. She walked out of her motel room with a cup of tea and a reusable bag. She'd swapped tags again, paid cash, slept under a fake name. She wasn't dramatic, she was strategic. And that's what made her so dangerous. Because she wasn't just stealing, she was studying. Studying how law enforcement worked, how they argued, how they overlooked, and most dangerously, how they turned on each other. It wasn't luck that helped her slip away the first time. it was precision. She saw the friction between departments, the tension between uniforms and suits, the weakness in a culture that values volume over vigilance. And she exploited it, not with violence, not with chaos, with observation, with calm. Just like the agents who caught her, except her calm served crime. So what's the real takeaway? It's this: professionalism must be louder than pride. Authority is only useful when it's paired with humility. And judgment, unchecked, unasked for, unexamined, isn't protection. It's interference. The aisle in that grocery store wasn't just a scene, it was a mirror. A mirror where one man saw a threat and another held a badge. A mirror where restraint won the moment. Not because it shouted, but because it stood still and let the truth speak. And if we're honest, that's the kind of power we need more of. Not every badge comes with wisdom. Not every suspicion deserves pursuit. And not every confrontation is necessary. True strength lies in how we hold back, not how we charge forward. This story isn't about good cops or bad ones. It's about what happens when professionalism is tested in the quietest moments. The truth is, every aisle, every sidewalk, every interaction is a test of our assumptions. And what we do in those quiet moments defines who we really are. If this story made you pause, think, or feel something, carry that forward. Because reflection is where real change begins.